Alright guys, so this is kind of an off-the-cuff video where I'm not actually insulting you and calling you peasants for a change. So enjoy it while it lasts. Peasant, did you really think that I would abandon you so easily? No. Now let's talk about varnish sophistication, but first, I am Guidetti. And I'm here once again to infuse your ass with the secrets of the old masters, but enhanced by my genius level intellect. Mahogany. You idiot! Why can't you just let the man speak? Why do you have to act like a jerk to them all the time? Ah, the ant speaks. You see, right there, you're always looking down on everyone. It seems like you have a lack of self-esteem. Me looking down on everyone isn't from a lack of self-esteem. It's from an abundance of it. Yeah, it's an abundance of something. Did you come here for a reason besides presenting a disturbingly clear contrast between genius and mongrel? Yeah, I came down here to say there will be plenty of videos where you can act like you know what you're talking about and show the world just how much you need friends. But for now, just let the man speak about his varnish. Fine. Fine, butthole. What? There's a lot of different ways you can varnish, and this is just how I do it, all right? Basically, I wait about 6 months before I varnish a painting because the painting can dry to the touch within a couple days. But you want to let the paintings dry for 6 months because they'll completely solidify, where the varnish, when you put it on, will not take the painting off. And I've had that happen before, and trust me, you don't want that to happen. You think? Shut up. Varnishing the painting is very important, and I like to do this. A lot of painters don't. I do it because it protects the painting. I use varnish that you can remove later on. So if it needs to be cleaned or something down the road, the restorer can always take the varnish up and then put another coat back on once it's clean, and we're good. What do I use for varnish, you might ask? Well, I use Liquitex Solivar Gloss Varnish. Before I varnish, I'll dust off all the dust with this brush. I'll make sure it's nice and clean, and then I'll go through with an even coat of varnish over it. And before we varnish, you either want to put it in a bowl and stir it, or just swirl it around some, just loosen it up. Make sure it's nice and even. You don't want air bubbles. And also, this is very important, one of the main reasons why I varnish, besides protecting the painting. After painting an oil painting, oftentimes the oil will sink into the canvas, or the board in this case. And what that does, it creates a dry chalkboard look. Imagine in a classroom, the chalkboard was a green chalkboard, it was dry, it looked very matte. Well, when the teacher went through and put some water on it to wash the board, it became very rich and vibrant, and that's the same thing that happens here with the paintings. They become rich and vibrant, and you get to see my genius on full display. I prefer using at least an inch wide synthetic brush to varnish with because it ensures a smooth and even coat. Sometimes you might see people using hog hair brushes, which is fine, but you need to make sure the hair doesn't shed into the painting as you varnish. The last thing you want is a beautiful painting with hair stuck to it. It's also easier to get a smooth brush stroke on with a fine synthetic brush. The one I'm using in this video is actually from Home Depot, so you don't need to be fancy and go to the art stores if you don't want to. Don't shake the bottle beforehand because this causes air bubbles. Like I said, either gently swirl it around like I do, or put it in a bowl and stir it just to ensure the varnish is evened out, especially if it is sat stagnant for a long period of time. I always buy the 8-ounce bottle because I want the varnish to be fresh. So whenever I varnish something, I usually buy a new bottle. One time I had to have a painting restored because I used old varnish on it, and let's just say weird things happened. It didn't dry properly, and white spots and bubbles formed all over the surface. Partially that had to do with the temperature of the room, which was too cool. So make sure you let the painting dry in temperature controlled rooms of around 72 degrees. Varnishing the painting really brings out the true colors, the darks and lights, and makes it just really pop. Just make sure you apply it evenly. Use uniform brush strokes and don't scratch into the painting. As you can see, I pour a little bit of varnish onto my brush and evenly work it into the painting. I find it easier to make the coat even in this way than I would if I were to just dump a large puddle of varnish onto the painting and have to brush that in. It's just easier to work in small doses, which is what I recommend. I would also advise on not varnishing tiny spots on the painting once the initial layer of the varnish has dried, because it won't look uniform and you will be able to see where you touched it up. There are exceptions and it can be done. I would just recommend being thorough in the initial application. Like I said, I wait 6 months for the oil painting to dry. The reason for this is that oil paint dries by oxidation. Varnishing a painting before it's completely dry essentially blocks the oxygen from doing its work. It can also take the paint up with it. But if applied after 6 months, the varnish acts as a barrier and protects against grime, UV rays, and clouding caused by excessive moisture. I like the Liquitex brand because it does not yellow over time and it remains flexible and non-sticky. Now this angel painting is just a painting I decided to do on my own when I didn't have any other projects, and I only did this about 7-8 months ago. Look at that. Let's bring this down some. Look at that. Judge George Bedsworth. There you go. Well, if you're so smart, how come it took you 2 years to get to painting instead of the 1 year, which is how long it took everyone else? Simply because I absorbed it more thoroughly than everyone else. Remember, the thoroughbird always gets the worm. That's not even the saying. That doesn't even make any sense. My genius transcends sayings, and especially sense. That's why you will always be in my shadow, you dumbass. You're wearing a woman's wig. So how do you clean the brushes? Lacquer thinner. So I use lacquer thinner to clean the brushes because it does a better job, in my opinion, than mineral spirits, specifically for varnish. Just don't get it on your hands. I always put a little bit in a cup and I can dab my brush in it until all the varnish is broken down. And then I just use regular soap and water to clean it with. Again, I'll dab the brush in the sink to get the soap out so I don't have to touch it with my hands. Basically, rinse and repeat until the brush is clean. I then dry it off and wrap it in a paper towel so it keeps its shape. The lacquer thinner can either be capped or I just throw it out in the woods because it's such a minimal amount. And that's about it. Paper towel. Wrap that sucker. There you go, nice and tight. Press it. And it keeps the shape that way. You kind of fold that top to lock it in. Right? Look at that. So you want to let it dry. It says about 2 days, but I'd give it 3 to 4 days until it's dry to the touch, and then this varnish will continue to dry over the course of another month. There's always that drying process, and it'll solidify after that. All right, guys, I think that about wraps it up. Louis Guidetti, out. Fatty, intellectual wannabe. I know you are, but what am I? A 10-year-old with that comeback. Even when I was 10, I was smarter than you. Oh my gosh, I swear my brain is so much bigger than yours is. You're so stupid. Yeah, stupid smart. Again, that doesn't make any sense. Your face doesn't make sense. You look like Big Bird.